Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to another episode of YPO Presents. I'm Scott Mordell, the CEO of YPO, and today we're speaking with YPO members Mandy, Gilbert, and James Lipscombe. It's especially a thrill to share peer-to-peer relative to what we do, and thank you, Mandy, and thank you, James, for joining us. Let me introduce them briefly, okay? So Mandy Gilbert is a speaker, investor, and an author. Having successfully built two international businesses from the ground up, she is the founder and chief executive of Creative Niche, a company that provides creative staffing and workforce management solutions to multinational corporations, as well as major advertising, digital, and public relations agencies. Welcome, Mandy. We're glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
James is managing director and owner of the Chesterford Group that operates the largest chain of fish and chip shops and restaurants in the UK. The London Stock Exchange named his company one of the 1,000 to inspire Britain last year due to its fast growth and its dynamic leadership. Welcome, James.
Hi.
All right. Before we get started, we'd like to remind all of you watching that you can ask questions. We're looking for your questions. You can post them in the comment section below. And if you're not following us already, please do so, and you can receive a notification when the next episode of YPO Events begins. But back to this current episode as we go. Mandy and James, today YPO published the results of the COVID-19 survey of 2,700 global chief executives from more than 100 different countries. Overall, chief executives report greater levels of optimism as compared to the surveys of just 1 month ago in March and April as it went. As contagion slows and the countries ease restrictions, businesses around the globe is reigniting. As the world reopens, nearly half, 49% of chief executives believe reopening is happening at a pace that's about right. So do you agree with that? Mandy, let's start with you.
You know what? It sounds about right. I would imagine sectors such as manufacturing, the restaurant, hospitality sectors it probably can't happen fast enough. Where other companies and sectors are comfortable working virtually, they figured it out, and it's not really been incredibly disruptive to their business. So, yeah, it sounds about right.
Thank you, Mandy. And James, what's your opinion?
Well, I just think it's incredibly country and industry specific, as Mandy's touched on. It's clear the government in the UK are trying to get the economy firing again. At a political level, there's a real mixture of opinions, and at a scientific level, Patrick Vallance, the government's chief scientific officer, said today that the UK has relatively large numbers of cases, which are still not coming down fast. They're clearly walking a tightrope between causing long-lasting damage to the economy versus ensuring that the infection rate doesn't increase above the R1 measure, which is obviously a real challenge for them. But there's definitely a sentiment in the UK that the situation is improving. However, we need to be careful as business owners and CEOs that complacency doesn't set in amongst our teams. I know the Financial Times conducted a survey this morning whereby 70% of people said they would continue to follow the lockdown rules, and 20% of people saying they will behave less strictly. The political scandal in the UK with regards to the Prime Minister's chief political advisor, Dominic Cummings, hasn't helped the situation around that. The government are clearly trying to make an impossible decision between people's lives and their livelihoods. I mean, my personal opinion is that at the moment, they're probably getting it about right. Although, as Mandy quite rightly said, it really is very, very industry specific. And I think if you ask the pub sector in the UK, for instance, you'd get a very different response.
It makes great sense, and thank you for that, both of you. Over the past several months, we've been tracking our members' path through the 4 phases of business disruption due to the COVID-19 crisis. And that would be immediate response, business continuity, business revival, and business recovery. And while it is industry specific, as you suggest, James, according to the survey data, 49% of the chief executives say their country is in the business continuity phase, while 39% believe their country is now in the business revival phase, the disruption phase. So James, you've talked on some of what you're seeing in some of the industries, but how does that dovetail specifically for you in terms of the industry you're in with restaurants?
Yeah, I mean, again, look, we're very much in the recovery stage, and Boris Johnson announced this week that he was setting up two ministerial teams to oversee the recovery plans to get the economy back on its feet. With retail, car dealerships, and estate agents, to name but a few, now able to open their doors, we're certainly seeing a revival. Although personal care and hospitality business, by and large, still don't have an opening date, which is clearly a difficult time for people involved in those businesses. Again, there are sort of specific businesses within specific sectors that can still open and trade, and we're very lucky to be designated as an essential service by the government, so we have been open and trading. And we've been trading pretty successfully since we opened. I mean, net consumer credit fell by a record 7.4 billion in April in the UK, and clearly people feel like they've got a bit of money in their pockets, thanks largely to the government introducing the furlough schemes and the mortgage lending break, which mortgage providers in the UK have given to their customers. And look, we're very fortunate, as I said, to be designated as an essential service, and at the majority of our sites are in local neighbourhood shopping centres, and we're very much part of our local communities, which means that it's very easy to come and shop with us, as opposed to having to maybe go to a large supermarket and stand in a very long queue. And the way that we've digitalised our business means that we can offer our customers a really slick service as well. I know that car dealerships, for instance, have been incredibly busy since they've opened after lockdown. A lot of people waiting, to have their cars serviced. I'd imagine that they're really hoping that the bounce back comes into car sales as well. I mean, manufacturing, for instance, in the UK is improving, although in the recent IHS market study, they're still saying that the output remained at depths unseen outside of the current pandemic and the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009. So look, there are clearly different pictures across different sectors and within across different sectors and within those sectors. We may well be a hospitality business, but we are allowed to open and trade due to the nature of our business.
Great, and thank you. And Mandy, how about you? What about Canada? Are companies back to hiring?
I think we're still in the business continuity stage with some indicators that we are moving towards recovery. So there's definitely been some activity. As it relates to hiring, some organizations have let go all of their contract workforce and have been keeping full-time jobs. But the majority of organizations have actually reduced their headcount. So I think we're going to see a lot of fractional freelance and a more strategic use of contract workforces. And a lot of senior leaders have looked at this opportunity and have reassessed their leadership team and have kind of come to the realization that maybe they're not set up for the future. So we have seen some strategic kind of restructuring happening at a senior level where they're bringing different talent in for different roles that will set them up for a more innovative and flexible culture and business environment. So there's definitely been some changes, and I'd say over the last 3 weeks we've seen an uptick in both full-time and freelance positions, but we're far from a bounce back. Yeah.
Well, still some encouraging news there.
Yes.
I'd like to shift over to business leadership as it goes. So many of our members and so many businesses everywhere are looking to reopen into a totally different environment than when they went to closure. And James, you had the challenge of reopening 40 different locations. And so as such, I've got two questions for you, which is one, how did you get up and running so quickly with really within a month of the spread of all that? And second is, can you describe the challenges you faced and really kind of what you touched on relative to them in a summary way?
Yeah, sure, Scott. There's been quite a few. I'm not going to lie. We shut our business down on the 24th of March. By the end of that week, we were already working on what we termed as our Phoenix plan to get our businesses back up and running again. The problem that we really faced was that the government advice was changing so fast that we just weren't confident that we could keep our customers and our teams as safe as we possibly could do with our existing health and safety and risk assessment protocols in place. And that's ultimately why we decided to close. And of course, as I see it, being responsible for 600 people's mortgages, I was very conscious that we needed to get our business back up and running again as quickly as we can. So we really worked this out in a 3-stage process, which was one, we knew that we had to work on our work with our environmental health department to create our new risk assessments and safe ways of working in conjunction with them to ensure that it was signed off at government level. Because that then really gives our teams and our customers confidence in the systems that we have in place to try and keep people as safe as we possibly can. That was the first thing that we did. And I'm really pleased to say that some of the health and safety protocols that we've implemented have actually been adopted by the UK government and have been rolled out to all restaurants and takeaways in the UK, which is something we're incredibly proud of, actually. Second thing is we needed to completely digitalize our business. We had typically 42,000 walk-in customers a week coming into our stores. Digital sales represented around about 17% of our total sales. And so therefore, we had to move very swiftly to that model being 100% digital sales. Now, clearly that brings a whole host of challenges, and we actually managed to do that within a 2-week period with training all of our teams, upscaling our click and collect system to be rolled out across all stores, as well as basically using and finding delivery vehicles to deliver fish and chips to customers. So that was a real challenge for us. And then the third part of our strategy was really using social media as the primary means of communicating to our customers. We use that to re-educate our customers on how they could shop with us through click and collect and delivery. And then, as soon as we basically got back up and running, I unfurloughed one of the members of my office team to aid our social media manager with that level of communication on social media, because it just exponentially grew over a very, very short space of time. And we wanted to ensure that we could give our customers the best possible service so that they knew we were there for them with any questions or concerns that they had. And realistically, I think we've done an excellent job at doing that. So I'd really urge, people out there who are running businesses to make sure that social media strategy is very much part of the way in which you communicate with your customer base. But just having to retrain your staff completely, to take 17% digital sales before to then 100% of your sales through digital channels was an incredible challenge for us, without a doubt.
Wow.
And then just around the challenges that we face, really, mainly for me, it was really changing and pivoting your business model and making sure you could keep people safe through your health and safety protocols, as well as creating an environment where your teams felt comfortable about coming back into work as well. That's really essential. We have never forced somebody to come back to work. You absolutely cannot do that. But, with the health and safety risk assessments we have in place and the way that we've communicated with our teams and certainly worked in conjunction with our teams to produce these, it means that they had the confidence to come back and work with us. The truth of the matter is, if we hadn't got our business back up and running, would we have been here in, 6 months' time? Who knows? And when you very much feel the weight on your shoulders of 600 people's mortgages, damn well you've got to pull out all the stops and do everything you possibly can do to ensure those customers, those employees can still continue to provide for their families. So that was really at the forefront of our thinking. But it's been a big switch and a big change. We've learned a lot very fast.
Wow. Well done, James. You've accomplished a lot. Wow.
Absolutely. That's a really well done. And I want to come back to the coordination of our teams in a bit. We're getting some questions in that regard as well. But Mandy, let's go over to the employment outlook. Certainly, we know some industries such as hospitality and food industries, and James is touching on some that have been hit really hard. But it's not all even. We've got a number, 15% of our member companies are telling us that they're actually growing and expanding right now when we look over to telecommunications and healthcare as examples. So I'm curious what you might be able to comment relative to the employment outlook overall and what you're seeing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, further to build on what James and his team went through, so many different sectors and companies have had to go through rapid digital transformation to sustain themselves. And so I think that consulting firms that have big digital arms that are focused in digital transformation, there's going to be a great growth area for that. Because people have started it, they've gone some makeshift solutions, but they'll know that in the future they're going to have to reinvest, probably do a deeper dive, and make sure that their transformation plan has that kind of sustainability that they need. So that's consulting services, product companies that building out tech products and going through that. Also. A lot of people have lost their jobs or they've had reduced hours and opportunities to earn income. You're going to see, an accelerated growth in entrepreneurs. And I think you're going to see a lot happening with the gig economy. So organizations like two Canadian darling companies are FreshBooks and Shopify that help entrepreneurs and small businesses set up their business, their e-com, help with that, with email marketing, CRM, and financial management of their businesses. So I think that the gig economy is happening sooner than what we anticipated. And B2C mobile kind of workforces. Maybe throughout this, I mean, we're seeing that a lot of hairstylists and chiropractors, instead of opening their practice, they're going to go to your site, your house. Swim instruction, you name it. So I do think you're going to see mobile workforces, and so platforms that serve that offering will, I think, do well in the future. As well as we're seeing a lot of innovative product companies that are purely e-com. They have no desire to go out and build out bricks and mortar. So we've been working with a ton of entrepreneurs that had a great idea, a great product, and their businesses are growing like gangbusters. Like they just can't hire fast enough, and they're building out their marketing team, their e-com team, and they're killing it. Like they're growing incredibly fast. So I think we'll continue to see that, because guess what? My mom, for instance, she never bought anything online. Now she's addicted. I've created a real monster. And so it used to just be a certain generation buying online. Now it's multi-generation, and they're addicted, and now they're getting served ads, and all they have to do is click a button if they want something, get shipped to their house. So anything kind of like the e-com side of things and retail and product, I think we'll continue to do really well.
Thank you. While you were answering, we've got a couple questions in, must be from the United States, who are talking about how they're having some trouble getting some people to come back to work because the government aid, as it turns out, is better than maybe what they were being paid or making by working live, and add together the risk, it's a little bit even more complicated. So I'm curious, are you seeing any of that in Canada? And then I'll ask James if he's seen the same thing.
Sure. So we haven't fully turned back on in Ontario anyway. So but I do anticipate that being a challenge, and that a significant reduced workforce are going to show up because they're not really financially motivated to do it. And then additionally, they're kind of putting themselves in risk potentially. So I did a talk on this a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's interesting is actually to survey your staff. It's an opportunity to understand why they're not coming to work, because we might make the assumption that it's because they're making more money on a program versus the risk factor. And so what can you do leveraging social and communication and using online tools to calm their worry and acknowledge it, but also understand their realities? I mean, some people are taking care of their senior citizen loved ones, and they're worried about that. Some people are single parents and not having accessible childcare. They don't really have a lot of options. So I think it's really important to understand why they're not coming back, and then get creative and think about, how could I incent somebody to come back? Can I do a program that after 100 hours worked, you get a $20 gift card, or what type of program would resonate with your employees? And maybe you assign a bit of a committee to focus on that. And I do think that, pushing doesn't work. You're going to have to pull your workforce back. because there's anxieties, there's worries, and there's realities you just don't relate to. You just don't. And so unless you really understand them, I don't think you can really put a plan in place to address it.
Great. Thank you. And James, are you seeing any of that as well, where it's difficult to get people to come back?
I think Mandy answered that question brilliantly. There's probably not that much I can add to what she said. It's a very similar picture in the UK. There is a vast disparity between people's reactions and thinking on COVID. So as Mandy quite rightly said, it's very much pull people into work and making sure they have the right information and making sure you're constantly communicating to them is absolutely crucial. I think what I would say is I think throughout this time, businesses really understand what kind of culture they have within their business. Whether or not it's the culture that they want, I don't know, but they certainly understand the culture that they have within their workforce. And certainly from my point of view, we've been doing a huge amount of work on culture over the last 2-3 years. And I couldn't have been proud of the way that our teams have reacted and gone above and beyond for us in the way that they've come back into work, phoning me up personally saying, when can we get the shops open when we're in lockdown? But that all takes time, and I understand that to build. But I can't reiterate the importance of company culture and building that company culture, certainly when times get back to normal.
Makes great sense, and thanks for that emphasis. It really matters. I want to go back to the survey a little bit and go beyond reopening and the immediacy and look ahead, maybe over the course of the years as we as leaders begin to look out in terms of how things are going to go forward. Okay. The companies, our members have told us that there are obstacles to what they consider their business viability. The biggest obstacles are what they foresee as diminished demand for their products and services going forward. Literally half of our members see that even a year out as we take a look. And changes in consumer behavior are very close behind at 44%. And then operating restrictions from the government would be another 32%. So those are big, seemingly very recurring kinds of obstacles. But looking a year out in your business, how would you articulate the biggest obstacles you're going to see across the service you do?
Yeah, certainly for me, the biggest obstacle we face is actually managing demand at peak times. As I said, we're very fortunate that we're allowed to open our businesses because we are designated as a government essential service. And because so many hospitalities businesses are closed at the moment, there just isn't the choice out in the market that there used to be. In the UK, there was no oversaturation of eating out opportunities or choice in the UK anyway. But this is really focused, put a focus on our real peak times. And for us, actually managing demand in those really busy times is a real challenge. We were lucky because we were ahead of the game. We had click and collect rolled out across a number of stores anyway, as well as delivery, using our own fleet of cars, using our own workforce to do the deliveries, which is slightly different to the majority of restaurant businesses and takeaways across the globe. I know they use third-party aggregators. We do in some way, shape or form as well, but certainly the vast majority of deliveries are done by us in our own vehicles, because I feel that we can manage that consumer experience far better and we can give a much better customer experience. And look, one of the challenges we've really had is where our delivery sales have grown by 900%, our click and collect sales have grown by 400%. Is that certainly we found that using the aggregator technology when it comes down to delivery has been a real challenge, because you can't actually control how many orders you're getting through in any given time period. And what that means is the machine will just suddenly spurt orders out at you. You have no control over how many are coming out, which then really puts pressure on your operations, your kitchen operations, and your delivery teams at peak periods. And certainly with the click and collect app technology we're using, uses a just-in-sequence supply chain model, which basically means that you can actually specify how many customers can order within any given time frame. So what that means is that you can allocate that only 4 customers can order in a 10-minute time frame. So if I'm a customer, I place an order at 4 o'clock to be collected at 7. the app will actually say, hey, all those slots are taken. So it will just bounces you on to the next nearest time slot, maybe 7:10. And then what happens in the kitchen is 10 minutes before that customer is due to come and collect that order, it prints out that customer's order. So you have 10 minutes to prepare and cook that food. So when the customer comes and collects it, it's piping hot and it's the best quality it possibly can be. So now what we're doing is we're actually trialing our own delivery app, which allows us to have that kind of just in sequence supply chain model, which means from a labor efficiency model, from a customer experience model, it means that my drivers aren't delivering food late to consumers because we've just got too many orders coming in and we can't manage the demand at peak times. It's going to make a huge difference to what we do. And that just in sequence supply chain modeling is absolutely essential to providing customers with a great consumer experience at the moment. So it really is how we manage at peak times is actually our biggest challenge at the moment that we face.
Thank you. And this is one of the things I love about business, when you scratch just a little bit and understand how things actually happen, because you work really hard to make everything look simple from a consumer or a customer standpoint. That you realize the complication that goes into that and what it takes to deliver quality and smooth things along. So, Mandy, I want to turn it to you relative to that question as well, just in terms of obstacles let me rephrase this because I just got a question from a member named Fernando from Brazil. It is really looking ahead beyond the obstacles, thinking about this new normal. Okay, and you both have touched on it a little bit in terms of the acceleration of technical and digital and some other things. But do you see this as a kind of just a wave that we have to kind of work our way through into COVID and just kind of get past it and then continue from there? Or is there just a continuing path of change in your view as you do an outlook? I think our members are trying to figure out, am I in crisis now for the next 12 months, or am I just really beginning a new workflow that's perpetual?
Right. Well, it's really definitely an accelerated learning opportunity. Mm-hmm. I mean, gosh, James, like hearing everything that you've been able to accomplish, you're probably going to look back, if not already, and say, hey, COVID was probably one of the best things that happened to the company, because you have changed so many cool operational and efficiencies with your business. So I think, who knows? No one has a crystal ball. So I look in the future as it being is looking at a blended future, where some things will normalize and go back to the way they were in some way, shape, and form. And some things might stay, and there just might be some ongoing uncertainty in our future. So I think future-proofing your business is an interesting exercise to go through. It's a great muscle to strengthen if you've not already been working your way at it, because that's how we're always having to work is to look at a sustainable business that is going to last through all kinds of different disruptions, whether it be a huge pandemic that we're facing, or if there is a black swan coming after your sector, whatever it might be. So I think for everyone that I've been talking to anyway, they're really curious to understand, what does employment look like in the future? And should we move 100% virtual if we can, or should we have a blended model, and what works for the business? And I think that's interesting. I think there are risks in going 100% virtual, because at the end of the day, we're humans. And if we want to attract great people and retain them, they're going to go where they have a clear vision for growth, feeling connectedness, and being part of something that's big and meaningful. So I think companies that go 100% virtual are going to have to work very, very hard at replacing that human interaction. So who knows? I think that evolving your business and focusing on the future-proofing as much as possible is something that, if you've not been doing it, it's a good kind of exercise and project to have on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. Well said. And I'll just speak on behalf of YPO as a business. We're experiencing very much of that in terms of we've been largely a remote organization, and we have 475 chapters as well. And so this idea of you don't want to walk away from your culture, but how do you nurture it? How do you sustain it? In these virtual connections, we're missing the in the room emotional and social cues that we've been conditioned and evolved as human beings for so long to adapt to. And yet, some virtual will be a choice as time goes forward, and some will just be a cost benefit trade-off. And so we as an organization and all of us as members in our connection, we share better when we're safe and when we feel connected as humans, right? And we want this among all of our staffs and all of our membership. And so being really good virtually in terms of making sure people can make the best choice, but at the same time, this idea of virtual is not going to go away. It's always going to be part of where things go. And so for us, when we look forward for the YPO model, the peer-to-peer model, about how the three of us are able to leverage 29,000 other executives for their insights and their connection and their support, the virtual is going to be muscles and experience. We're going to have to somehow fit into our cultures as we play that out. So.
Yeah, Scott, I'll just add
to that. Go ahead, please, James.
Yeah, I just think, in terms of the future and what's happening now and how it's going to change our business moving forward, I cannot see serving the same amount of customers walking into our sites in the same way that they were, in terms of queues of 20 people on a Friday night queuing up to buy their food. I think our click and collect system will replace a lot of those queues. It's so slick. You just walk straight to the front, show your phone, get given your food, you're out the door in a minute, 2 minutes. Why wouldn't you continue to do that? So I think that's fundamentally going to change the way in which our customers shop with us. And also, me and my team have very much taken this as an opportunity to look at all the processes and systems and the way that we do things within the business and actually say, hey, do you know what? Why are we doing some of this stuff?
Yeah.
Because this is crazy. We need to do more with less. So let's try and figure this out with trying to make all of our processes far more simple than they were before. I think maybe one of the challenges is that a lot of businesses out there who are up and running are maybe figuring out that they can do more with less. What that then means for the workforce is open to debate. But there are certainly a lot of business leaders out there looking at their current business models and literally ripping them up and starting.
Makes great sense. And speaking of business models, we've got a question from Simon, a member, relative to the inbound supply chain. Everybody's talking about supply chains in a different way, both in a long-term kind of way. But the question here is, how is your inbound supply chain held up, especially in food service and with all the disruptions we're all reading about?
Yeah, certainly in food service, we haven't had too much of a problem. What I would say is when COVID-19 first started in the UK and the lockdown started on the 24th of March, there was mass panic buying at the supermarkets. So any fresh produce was pretty difficult to come by. However, frozen products, not so much of an issue. And what we did is, because, again, as I mentioned earlier, one of our biggest challenges is that peak demand period, we've reduced the size of our menus down so that we really focus on our core best-selling items. It makes it far simpler for the teams in the stores to be able to get the food out quickly. And it really just allows you to kind of simplify and streamline your business model. So we just sort of reduce our items down. And I think that's meant that on the whole, with certainly the conversations I've been having with suppliers, it's been pretty easy to actually go and get what we've needed from them.
Thank you. Looking ahead even a little bit more, because we're realizing that we're not in a linear world, right? We keep getting surprised by things keep popping in and whatever that would look like. What's your points of view, both of you, and we'll go to Mandy first, but what's your points of view on a second wave, okay? Because our members have said in our survey that a second wave could be quite devastating and actually challenge the viability of their business again, okay? And so in this sense, we're working through this first wave and beginning a reopening, and just how do you look ahead? What counsel would you have, or point of view?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking because there are so many. I mentor 15, 20 entrepreneurs. I'm invested in a few. And, everyone's kind of been hanging on by a string, hopeful that things are going to recover. And so, my heart breaks for people sweating already the second wave when we're already dealing with, our current situation where we're located. So I feel like, it's definitely an opportunity to look at, to James' point, is pull apart your whole, business model and all of your process and steps and how you work, and look to automate some, look for efficiencies. If you can, scale your business down more without killing your product or service, and just take whatever lines you can pull down, any credit vehicles, and just try to brace yourself as much as possible. And when we do get this rebound, is just be ready for it, even if it's just temporary, to capitalize on it as much as possible and be ready for it from a marketing standpoint, delivery, and just looking at, what efficiencies you can really tackle with your existing team. Yeah.
Thank you, Mandy. Anything to add to that, James, from your view?
Yeah, look, I would just say that, in terms of what's happening in the UK at the moment in the second wave, I mean, many of the businesses that have had to remain shut through the period have just been burning through cash, as you can imagine. We've had 46,000 businesses being lent £8.9 billion in the UK through the CBILS government-backed loan scheme. Only 50% of the businesses that have tried to apply for those loans and get those loans have actually been successful in getting them. So clearly there's a real problem there with getting this money to companies. Smaller businesses are being offered £50,000 through the government-backed bounce back loan scheme. £21.3 billion being lent by the government again. So a lot of those businesses are really precariously placed. Cash is probably the simplest answer.
Yeah.
Keeping hold of as much cash. As much as you can, but that's easy to say now. But most of the companies, certainly that I know and that my friends run, have burnt through that. And then it's a case of what does the support look like after that? And to be fair to the UK government, they have brought out a raft of proposals, which a number of businesses. And obviously, 8.4 million people are currently furloughed in the UK have benefited from. But it does make me worry when that furlough starts to ebb away, which it will do in a structured manner over the next 3-4 months. Just what that will mean for the unemployment rate in the UK, I feel is going to be pretty disastrous. Yeah. We will see. I hope not.
Thank you. Makes great sense. So just as a peer-to-peer organization, usually the advice that we can give each other ends up being really the best. And you have touched on it over the course of our conversation about things to pay attention to, but love to see if we can't bring it together and just give each of you the opportunity to, what advice would you give to other global leaders, other YPOers, other people interested relative to what to be doing now to really achieve in their leadership? So Mandy, why don't you go first, please?
Yeah, I can talk about that. Is that, before all of this happened, it was a very active market. It was very much a candidate market. Mm-hmm. And people stopped looking. They stopped interviewing for job security. And so my number one advice is to reconnect with all your key employees and triage them. Triage their engagement, their happiness, because when things pick up, there's going to be a lot of PTSD. Like there just is. People have had to let their employees go. They've got their kids they're managing with. They've had to lead virtually. They've had to be forced through transformation, making efficiencies. And they might just be wanting just a new start once this is through with a new clean slate. So it's a really good opportunity. I know everyone's going to be keen and driving results and like pushing what's the next goal. And if for your key staff, the ones that keep you up at night, if the thought of ever losing them, have conversations with them, get them excited about their future, align them with new goals, invest in their learning and development, treat them, do something creative to make them feel special and valued. Everyone's feeling a little beaten up. And sometimes as leaders, we are like, well, we're keeping jobs and I haven't been able to cut anyone, or I haven't had to cut anyone. And, I'm carrying the pressure and all of this weight, but in all actuality, so is your team. And so it's just one thing you just want to make sure you're on top of, because when this is through, I would imagine we're going to go back to a really active job market again. And key performers, no matter what the economic climate's like, I'm in recruitment, they're always wanted. So just make sure you're on top of that and you give that special attention. And also that while we're going through this, if you've not been your best self, really try to get that in check. And make sure you're not bringing stress and anxieties, and you're not blaming and shaming and pointing fingers. You're pulling people together and collaborate, and you're doing that with empathy and compassion, and you're getting people excited about their future within your company. That's my advice.
Thank you, Mandy. Really, thank you very much. James, any comments you'd like or advice you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I really strongly believe to be successful now in the future, you've got to focus on three things. And that's one, the digitalization of your business. Two, simplicity through new ways of working and business models that I touched on earlier. And certainly, three, in terms of being affordable, in terms of both the cost of running your company and your price value propositions to the consumer as well. I think those three elements of strategy are certainly all we're talking about in our business at the moment. And we're really going to be pinning, our future on those three areas and working incredibly hard to make sure that we do all three of those.
Fantastic. And Mandy and James, thank you so very much. To all of our listeners, thank you for participating with us today. We didn't get to all the questions, with apologies, but hopefully we can do more. And here's where you can go get more information. First of all, for everybody who's a leader, it's lonely at the top. We're making really big decisions, and sometimes every leader can feel all alone. Even if not the CEO, they can feel all alone because they're making difficult decisions and trade-offs and the rest of that stuff. And while there's all kinds of studies and platitudes that are out there, ultimately nothing's better than really being able to engage and open up personally with somebody who can share from their personal experience what they've been doing, what they've considered, what kinds of information points they can rely upon. And that, my friends, is exactly what YPO is all about in our peer-to-peer involvement. But also, for those of you who are non-members, we do have more content available on ypo.org, more details about what our CEOs are thinking about, and you can find us there. And so this recording will be available on demand for those folks. But at the same time, we've got a lot to do to bring humanity together and work on our future and continue away. So this will conclude our call. Thank you, everybody, and be well and take care. Okay.
Thanks. Take care.